A month ago I turned 18, and I decided that it was time to fly out of the parental nest. I had been saving up money to rent an apartment since I was 16, so all I had to do was find a suitable place to live. My choice fell on an ordinary sleeping area, which was full in our city. One of its significant advantages was the walking accessibility of my university, only 10 minutes by yards. The price of the apartment was quite satisfactory to me, and so the owner and I agreed to meet on Friday, right after the couples. I arrived at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to inspect the future den. The building itself did not stand out from the rest, an ordinary Khrushchev. But when I entered the entrance, I was pleasantly surprised. There were well-groomed flowers on the windowsills, the walls were not painted by teenagers, and in general it was very clean and well-groomed inside. The apartment I chose was on the 4th floor. It fully corresponded to the photos on the website: one room with a large bed and a comfortable workplace, a compact kitchen, and a newly renovated bathroom. The hostess and I immediately signed all the necessary documents for the lease. I received the keys, and we said goodbye. And so my new independent life began. For the rest of the day and Saturday, I moved all my things and bought groceries for the week. Sunday flew by unnoticed. I cleaned all day, cooked food for a few days in advance to take lunches to university with me, and in the evening I tried unsuccessfully to prepare for classes. It was a restless night. I woke up to annoying shuffling sounds from above. There was a feeling that someone decided to move the cabinet. What kind of overnight redevelopment? It was 2:30 on the clock. For an hour I tossed and turned in bed, but the noise did not subside. Anger seized me. Tomorrow, on the first pair, I was waiting for a difficult test. I couldn't think of anything better than getting out of bed and tapping on the batteries. After a couple of minutes of my continuous knocking, the screeching from above finally stopped. I woke up, as usual, at 6 in the morning, and immediately began to get ready for university. The night's incident made my head ache from lack of sleep. I failed the test, but for some reason I didn't think about the neighbors anymore. I blamed myself more for the lack of preparation, because I had very little time because of the move. When I got home, I cooked dinner and had a little rest watching my favorite TV series. I didn't sit up for a long time, and already at 10 in the evening I went to bed. I was woken up by exactly the same sounds as yesterday. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the time on the illuminated clock, 2:30. Again. More than anything, I wanted to get some sleep. The whole school week was going to be difficult. In a fit of cold rage, I decided to get up and find out what my neighbors were up to. Why the hell don't they let me sleep for the second day in a row? I got dressed and went out on the landing. With confident, firm steps, he went up to the floor above and began knocking loudly on the door. No one opened it. The rusty handle was covered in dust. The wooden door with the peeling brown paint didn't look very strong. If I hit it with my foot, it would fly out altogether. I froze listening. There was no grating noise that annoyed me, but I heard another sound, the patter of small bare feet. Someone was running from one part of the apartment to another. I knocked again, but less insistently. My whole fuse was gradually coming to naught. I was preparing for a showdown, not a lecture on behavior for young children. Suddenly, for some reason, their parents left them alone for a couple of days. Then the trampling stopped. I couldn't hear anything for a while, so I decided to lean my ear against the door. And at that moment, a blow came from the other side, which would have been able to knock the flimsy door off its hinges, but for some reason it remained in place. But I, frightened, fell on my back. When I got up, I heard the unnatural hollow laughter of an adult. Frightened, I quickly returned to my apartment and closed the door with all the locks. I couldn't sleep anymore. I had the feeling that I was faced with something inexplicably terrible. In the morning, I wrote to the headman and said that I was ill. I'd been trying to distract myself with simple household chores all day. In the evening, I finally decided to get some air, but, going down the stairs in the entrance, I tried not to turn around. Still not deciding which way to go, I stayed for a couple of minutes near the house. At that moment, a heavy-set, kind-looking man of about 50 came up to me. "Good evening. I saw you with your things the other day. Do you now live on the 4th floor?" "Hello." "Yes," I answered uncertainly, not knowing what other surprises await me. "I'm Henry, your downstairs neighbor." I didn't have time to get acquainted right away. "There's so much work in the auto repair shop that I forget about food," he said with a sad smile. Surprisingly, talking to a stranger restored my mental balance. Henry turned out to be a pleasant companion. His workshop was next door, and after a long day at work, he seemed to be looking for live communication too. After discussing the move, my studies and his work, we switched to you, and I decided to ask. "Henry, do you know who lives on the floor above me?" "Yes, no one lives there. This is the only apartment on the floor has been empty for as long as I can remember. And I've lived in this house for 30 years. Like you, I moved here as a student, but I didn't rent an apartment, I got it from my grandmother. My grandmother also told me that a whole family died in this apartment. The father went crazy and stabbed his wife and twin children about 7 years old. Yes, it's a terrible story. The owners of neighboring apartments prefer not to tell about this." After his words, I felt sick. I always laughed at children's horror stories about ghosts and the living dead, but now I was not laughing. I quickly said goodbye to my neighbor, who was surprised by my reaction, and returned to my apartment. After standing for a cold shower, I came to my senses a little. My brain refused to believe what was happening, and I decided to think about it again in the morning. As a last resort, I can always go home to my parents. I got into bed, but the unnatural laughter wouldn't leave my head. Closer to 2:30, I anxiously stared at the ceiling, waiting for the familiar screech. This time I made a promise to myself that I would never try to stop him, but it was too late. There was a knock of small knobs on my door, against which the creepy laughter I already knew sounded.